In order to pray for Xiaoling's safety, I dragged my crippled legs up 3,000 steps to offer an eternal lamp. He did come back, but with a woman by his side. She was the junior sister whom he had been pursuing for many years. There was a lot of murder in the martial arts world, and my junior sister's husband was missing. Xiaoling asked me to make a bed for her, so that she could live there peacefully. I heard my junior sister ask us why we don't have children yet. Xiaoling said indifferently, "How can a cripple give birth?" Text 1. It was raining heavily in Fuhua Valley, so I asked my maid Xiang to bring me a walking stick. "Madam, are you going out at this time?" "Yes. I want to go back to the Golden Pagoda Temple and blow out the eternal lamp." Ken, Xiang's gaze fell on the heavy rain outside. The rain stirred up dust and made the flower paths on both sides messy. These are the white camellia plants that I planted one by one, but now they are unable to stand up due to the rain. Many flower buds fall off the branches, so camellia is also called the broken-head flower. You should tell your master. Xiaoling? He probably doesn't have time to talk to me right now. I've already said that. I said to Xiang with a smile. Please help me put on the raincoat, and also hold a glass lantern for me. It's getting dark. 2. Xiang did not bring the glass lamp. That Miss Kobayashi was frightened and afraid of the dark. In order to make her feel at ease, Xiaoling hung all the glass lamps in the mansion in her room. Didn't you say I was going to use it? I told you not to go out today. The roads are slippery in the rain, and it would be bad if you fell. As I listened to these words, I suddenly realized that this seemed to be the first time he cared about me. We have been married for 4 years, and he has never told me not to go out on a rainy day. Today is strange. Good. I nodded in agreement, turned aside, picked up a paper lantern at random, and walked out. Because of what Xiaoling said, I was determined to put out the lamp. I couldn't let him know that I climbed 3,000 steps for him, prayed devoutly, and even burned my blood into lamps, hoping for his return. This is really stupid and mean. Xiaoling and I were not a loving couple. When Lin Ruyue broke off the engagement with him, he once committed suicide. I walked up to him step by step with my crutches and told him in the calmest tone possible, "Let's work together." 3. Xiaoling and Lin Ruyue were childhood sweethearts, but when he went out for training for a year, his younger sister fell in love with a stranger. She cried and begged Xiaoling for forgiveness, then turned around and ran away with the man. Xiaoling was ridiculed by the people in the underworld, and his reputation was ruined overnight. It was me who stepped forward and married him. When I was young, I broke my leg in an accident and became a cripple ever since. I couldn't practice martial arts and was almost a useless person. It just so happens that no one wants me either. I raised my lips towards Xiaoling and handed him the engagement letter I had prepared. It's already been written for you. You don't have to do anything. I waited for Xiaoling for 3 months, and my neck was sore from waiting. It's been so long that I started to laugh at myself, saying that even if Xiaoling was abandoned by someone, he would never fall in love with me. When he actually came to propose marriage, I was so happy that I even forgot to take my crutches. I took 2 steps forward and fell heavily to the ground. Xiaoling came forward and helped me up, his eyes filled with worry. Be careful. 4. Ma'am, you have to be careful. Xiang followed me 2 steps, holding up her skirt, and spoke loudly. I looked back and smiled. Let's go back. The Golden Pagoda Temple is located in a dense forest. The road was slippery due to the heavy rain. My crutches sank into the mud, and it took a lot of effort to take 1 step forward. Just like my marriage with Xiaoling, every time I have to put in a lot of effort to get a little closer to him. We slept in our clothes on our wedding night, and in the spring of the following year, Lin Ruyue had a child. Xiaoling was drinking to drown his sorrows. I walked up to him, snatched the wine glass, and slowly took off my clothes in front of him. He hugged me and cried. His eyes were red, like the rabbit I raised. Xiaoling once touched my hair and said thank you for helping him get out of this situation. I thought that if I tried hard enough, I could make him love me. After all, we are married and have many, many years to go. But Lin Ruyue's appearance shattered my fantasy. Xiaoling couldn't let her go, Even though his junior sister ruined his reputation, had an affair with someone else behind his back, and even eloped. Xiaoling loves her. All along, Xiaoling has been following Lin Ruyue, and I have been following Xiaoling. It's really tiring. I was so absorbed in my thoughts that I didn't notice the rocks at my feet. My crutches slipped, and I hurriedly used my hands to control my balance. The lantern fell to the ground and soon went out. The sound of rain in the woods accelerated, as if urging me to walk faster. But my feet hurt so much that I couldn't help but shed tears. Pei Shan, don't be like this. It makes you look even more pitiful.
5.
In the middle of the night, I gritted my teeth and walked to the mountain gate, but found that due to heavy rain, the gate was closed and no pilgrims were allowed to visit. I looked around and caught a glimpse of a thatched hut. Although it is broken, at least it can shelter us from wind and rain. I lay down and cover my legs with the wet straw. If my leg gets cold, it will hurt like 1,000 insects are eating away at my bones, and it's already showing some symptoms. The next day, I woke up with leg pain. Before I could get up, I heard a man and a woman talking outside. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the voice sounded familiar. This golden pagoda temple is the most effective. Once you walk up the 3,000 steps, all your wishes will come true. Little junior sister, don't worry, the child will be fine. Lin Ruyue's husband was involved in a secret fight in the underworld, and his whereabouts were unknown. As for their child, they had arranged for the old slave to take him away early in the morning, but he did not show up at the agreed location. Lin Ruyue was terrified and lost a lot of weight. She collapsed against a pillar, extremely weak. How can I climb up in my current state? She covered her face and cried. Xiaoling was slightly stunned, then said affectionately, I'll carry you up. You must climb up by yourself to show your sincerity. How can I ask you to do it for me? I have already delayed my senior brother a lot, and also my sister-in-law. I am afraid that she did not come back all night because of me. Lin Ruyue started crying. There was worry in Xiaoling's eyes, but it was obviously not because of me. Pei Shan wouldn't do that. She's not a petty person. I'm afraid she was delayed outside for something. Xiaoling frowned, a hint of annoyance flashing across the corners of his eyes. It seemed that my existence was something that made him feel awkward. The two of them leaned against each other for a while and only walked towards the mountain gate when the rain gradually stopped. Only then did I dare to lift the straw curtain and found that my legs were already red and swollen. Xiaoling is right. I am such a disabled person that I can't even take care of myself. How can I have a child? How can I be worthy of having a child? I stood up with the help of a cane and secretly looked at their backs through the gap in the curtain. They are a perfect match. What am I?
6.
They climbed up for a long time before I dared to follow them. The steps are steep, and those who go up rarely look down. I watched Xiaoling wipe Lin Ruyue's sweat and pass her water. After the sun rose, he used his sleeves to help Lin Ruyue block the sun. Xiaoling and I have been married for so many years, and he has never been so gentle to me. I used to be able to deceive myself, thinking that he was naturally indifferent and would not do anything really normal. But now, I can no longer deceive myself. My legs became more and more swollen, and every step felt like a knife cutting. When I finally walked up the last step, I happened to see Xiaoling gently holding Lin Ruyue in his arms to comfort her. Perhaps they heard my footsteps. They both raised their eyes at the same time. Lin Ruyue hastily pushed Xiaoling away, but she was too weak and it had the opposite effect. The two hugged each other even tighter. I pulled up the corners of my mouth to smile bitterly, but heard Xiaoling say, Where did you go last night? There are so many things at home that need your attention. How could you just leave without saying hello? And your clothes? Xiaoling looked me up and down, with disdain almost overflowing from his eyes. Last night, I dropped the lantern and fell several times, and was already covered in mud. Even a little monk outside the mountain gate would ask me with concern if I needed help. But my husband, with whom I had slept for 10 years, only saw my ugliness and despised me for being a disgrace. I told you. I pursed my lips. When I greeted you when you were talking to Miss Xiaolin. Also, you know I asked Xinger to get the light. Xiaoyang didn't expect that I would refute him, and he remained silent for a while. I walked towards him step by step with my crutches, and my chest felt stuffy when I smelled the sweet peach blossom scent on Lin Ruyue's body. That is my favorite balm. There are 2 peach trees in Fuhua Valley, which were planted by my parents themselves. Every year the flowers are picked and the dew is collected to make a paste, which fills a small jar no larger than the size of a thumb. I usually don't want to use it and only take it out and smell it when I miss my parents. Miss Lin smells really good. Lin Ruyue's face suddenly became flustered, and she subconsciously tried to explain. I just felt uncomfortable, so I just took a can. Don't be angry, sister-in-law. Casual? I looked at Xiaoling, who was too guilty to look me in the eye. I always put this jar at the back of my makeup box. It's not something I can easily get at. If Miss Lin likes the smell of peach blossoms, just use it to apply it. I knew from the beginning that Lin Ruyue loved peach blossoms. I still remember the time when they danced sword dance together under the peach tree. Since she likes it, then why should I like it too, no matter how worthy I am? I am not even a hair's worth of hers. Sister-in-law, are you angry? Lin Ruyue stood up, looking worried. I'm not angry with her. I just think she doesn't know how important this bottle of ointment is to me. But Xiaoling knew that he witnessed how I lost my parents and watched me cry until dawn because of missing them. He also swore in front of his parents' graves that he would take good care of me for the rest of my life. But he didn't seem to take it to heart. The oath is like a piece of black silk, blown away by the wind. No, how could that be? If you like, just use it. I don't like peach blossoms now. I didn't say a word to Xiaoling, but limped towards the hall. Xiaoling walked up to me and tried to support me, but I just turned my head and looked at him with a smile. Miss Lin is even weaker. You should go and help her. My collar slipped from Xiaoling's palm. He hesitated for a moment, but finally turned back to help Lin Ruyue. The abbot in the hall saw that it was me and greeted me with a smile. I nodded slightly. Can the ever-burning lamp that has been lit be extinguished? Xiaoling, who was following closely behind, couldn't help but look up when he heard this. The abbot didn't seem to understand what I meant. Don't worry, as long as this temple is still alive, the eternal lamp will never go out. No, abbot. My voice was shaking, but I had never been so determined in my life. I suddenly don't want to hope for his safety anymore. Can I blow out that lamp? Xiaoling supported Lin Ruyue, his eyes fixed on the slowly floating lamp. 7. Half a year ago, Xiaoling wanted to go out and help the Lin family resolve this dispute. Lin Ruyue's father used hidden weapons when fighting with her husband, injuring a member of the Tang clan, which led to revenge. The Tang clan's badges and insignias must be compared, not to mention that the Lin clan was at a loss in the first place. I begged Xiaoling not to go. Not to mention that this trip was extremely dangerous, as a reputable and upright sect, we, Fawagu, would never support those who do evil. But Xiaoling just lowered his eyes and looked at me. His eyes were cold. Are you not asking me to go because you are jealous of my junior sister? My hands gradually loosened, and I was left speechless. What is he talking about? Am I such a jealous and shameless person in his heart? No matter what, I am still a disciple of the Lin family. If my master is in trouble, I can't not go. Xiaoling drew out his sword, as if he would end all ties with me if I continued to obstruct him. I'm just worried about your safety. I explained softly, but all I got was a cold snort from him. Xiao is not a coward. Amidst the bitter wind and cold rain, the peach blossoms in the flower valley fell one after another. I ran after him, my walking stick hitting the bluestone slabs with thunderous sounds. Xiaoling rode away without looking back, and only Ah Xiang helped me put on the raincoat. The peach trees on the left and right were bent down by the wind and rain, and the rubbing of branches made low rustling sounds, as if my parents were crying for me. Xiaoling hasn't returned for half a month, and the spies I sent out to investigate didn't bring back good news. I couldn't sleep every night, and my hair fell out in clumps. I am a cripple, a useless person in the world. Apart from going up the mountain to light lamps and pray for Xiaoling, there is nothing I can do. But now, this lamp has become a joke. The abbot was silent for a long time. His eyes fell on Xiaoling, as if he understood something. Can. Having said that, the abbot leaned over and led me to the lamp. The blood from the cut I made the day before still remained on the lotus seat. I closed my eyes, but the pain I felt that day was nothing compared to the heart-wrenching pain I felt right now. There is no greater sorrow than a dead heart. I no longer have the energy to love Xiaoling. I leaned over to blow out the lamp, and at the moment the flame went out, the lamp in Lin Ruyue's hand was lit. She shed a line of tears and looked at Xiaoling with longing eyes. "Brother, will I be able to fulfill your wish?" Xiaoling was originally looking at me, but the suspicion and hesitation in his eyes disappeared when he lowered his eyes and looked into Lin Ruyue's gaze and turned into doting. He raised his hand to wipe away the tears from Lin Ruyue's eyes. Of course, this place is very effective.
8.
Before going down the mountain, Xiaoling found an opportunity to ask me, "Have you been here before? Don't you know how dangerous it is for a crippled person like you to climb so high? What if something happens? And what about that lamp? Who did you light it for?" He was only willing to talk to me when Lin Ruyue was not around. I raised my crutches and spoke softly. "I have it, and it's more useful than you." A trace of anger flashed in Xiaoling's eyes. "Pei Shan, you don't really mind my junior sister, do you? Didn't I explain to you that she is homeless and very pitiful now?" Xiaoling was expecting my explanation, just like he had done in countless previous arguments. I always bow my head first. "Right." I raised the corners of my mouth lightly. "I mind if my husband has another woman in his heart." Xiaoling frowned slightly. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. However, he couldn't convince himself to admit that his feelings for Lin Ruyue were just a master-disciple relationship. "Xiaoling, I have delayed you for 10 years. I looked at him in complete calm. "I'm going to let you go now and let you achieve your goal, okay?" Xiaoling's face turned pale in an instant. He actually pulled my sleeve. "How come he doesn't mind that I'm dirty now?" "Pei Shan, stop making trouble." His tone softened a lot. "I'm serious." I slowly pushed his hand away and handed him a clean handkerchief. "Xiaoling, I made your hands dirty, please wipe them. I will write the divorce letter when I get home. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other anymore." 9. I thought that saying this would be like 1,000 snakes gnawing at my heart, but unexpectedly, I felt more relaxed than ever before. When Xiaoling saw me turn around and leave, he originally wanted to say a few more words to me. But Lin Ruyue suddenly appeared behind him and said in a soft voice, "Brother, I want to stay in the temple for a few more days to pray for Also. Can you accompany me?" So Xiaoling stopped chasing me. "How many days will you stay?" "About a month, but why did my sister-in-law leave again? Doesn't she want to talk to me?" "Senior brother, why don't you go and accompany my sister-in-law?" Lin Ruyue's voice became quieter and quieter, and the next words she said were blown to the top of the mountain by the wind, so I couldn't hear them clearly. But I heard Xiaoling's reply clearly. "Don't worry about her. She's having another attack. Of course I'll stay with you." Because of this sentence, I fell again. Kneeling on the bluestone slab with his intact leg, he felt a dull and severe pain. I subconsciously took a breath of cool air. I heard footsteps behind me. Lin Ruyue tried to pull me up and asked softly, "Sister-in-law, are you okay?" But Xiaoling held her hand down, and when I looked up, I only saw the man's cold profile. "Let her stand up on her own." I struggled to straighten my crutches and tried to stand up with the strength of my arms, but last night's long walk had already exhausted me. "Didn't you say that the cane is more useful than me?" Xiaoling uttered a sigh, and he leaned forward slightly to look at me, as if waiting for me to beg for mercy. "Can you stand up on him now?" Tears welled up in my eyes, but I didn't say a word. I just supported myself with my slipping hands again and again. I don't know how many times I felt frustrated. Finally, Xiaoling reached out his hand to me. "Come on, let me help you." This hand in front of me has never taken the initiative to shake mine. This is the first time. 15 years. I have liked Xiaoling for 15 years. There were many late nights when I curled up in a small corner beside the bed and gently touched his palm with my fingers while he was sleeping. I wanted him to love me so much and wanted him to take the initiative to hold me in his arms. But when this hand really reached out to me, I just wanted to laugh at myself. How pitiful, Pei-shan, you are like a begging dog. No need. I spoke softly, looking up at him with a smile. I can stand up on my own. If you can't stand up once, you can try 100 times. Don't bother.
10.
I don't know how I stood up in front of Xiaoling and Lin Ruyue, but he suddenly felt more powerful, and he forced himself to move away from Xiaoling step by step, using his hands to support himself. It was difficult, but my self-esteem forced me to do it. Fortunately, the little monk helped us get down the mountain, and Ah Xiang had already hurried over in a carriage at the foot of the mountain. Sitting in the carriage, Ah Xiang handed me a hand warmer and said softly, "Ma'am, you've suffered." My tears suddenly burst out like a dam breaking. All the grievances of the past 10 years burst out in an instant. I leaned on Ah Xiang's shoulder and cried until I almost suffocated. It was as if my heart had been hollowed out, with clumps of black, rotten cotton wool inside. I tried to pull these things out, but they were attached to my flesh. Every time I pulled it, my whole body hurt, as if I was killing myself piece by piece. Why does it hurt so much? It hurts more than when I broke my leg. But at that time, I could cry in my parents' arms and they comforted me. "Don't be afraid, my son. We will take care of you." Now I have no parents, I have nothing. All that's left is me and this crippled leg that will never be able to stand up again. 11. I wrote the divorce letter in the house. It is always cloudy and rainy in Fuhua Valley, but today the sun is shining brightly. Ah Xiang, send someone to deliver this letter to the Golden Pagoda Temple. Also, pack up Xiaoling's things and send them over as well. Ah Xiang's hands were shaking slightly, and the little girl asked tentatively, "Madam, are you angry?" I have never argued with Xiaoling. No, I want a divorce. Ah Xiang was left to me by my parents. She was only a few months old when she entered Gu. Like a little kitten, crying sharply. Fawagu is very poisonous, but my parents are extremely kind. They used the murderous herb to cure Ah Xiang. Will you be Shaner's younger sister from now on? Ah Xiang has always been very well behaved and always served me as a maid. Very good. When Ah Xiang heard me say the word divorce, tears instantly rolled down her eyes. She realized she had lost her temper and hastily wiped away her tears with her sleeve. "Miss, you finally figured it out." She quickly changed her address, as if she had been waiting for this day. Ah Xiang stomped her feet lightly on the floor tiles in delight. I was amused by her reaction and patted her arm with my fingers. "Go ahead." "Yes." Ah Xiang left in a hurry, silly girl, afraid that I would change my mind. After I sent the divorce letter, there was no news. I spent every day in the valley studying the medical books and herbs left by my parents, and I felt more fulfilled than before. Half a month later, I was sleeping when I suddenly noticed the side of my bed sink. When he opened his eyes, Xiaoling's face looked quite tired under the moonlight. "Do you really want a divorce?" The divorce letter in his hand shook slightly. I sat up with my clothes on and nodded to him. "Do you know? Lin Ruyue's husband is dead." Xiaoling suddenly spoke without any clue. "What does this have to do with me?" "Then congratulations, you can be with her now." Xiaoling sneered, lit a candle, and sat down at the desk. In the flickering candlelight, I saw that the divorce letter had become curled and wrinkled. There was only one line of words on it. Fawagu Peishan voluntarily divorced Xiaoling. It was very simple, without any unnecessary rhetoric, and without even asking for Xiaoling's opinion. "Are you really going to divorce me?" Xiaoling sat on the chair and asked again. "Which word in the letter do you not recognize?" I suddenly lost my patience with him, but it was too late to undo what had happened. "I came here to tell you that if you are sincere, there will be no regrets about this matter." However, Xiaoling curled his lips and sneered. He turned his eyes and stared at me. Until now, he was still waiting for me to lower my head first. "We have been married for 10 years, and I know him very well." I nodded slightly, and my eyelids slowly closed due to sleepiness. "I know." If it's because of Lin Ruyue, Pei Shan, you're really overthinking it. There's no way the two of us can be together again, even if her husband dies. I interrupted Xiaoling before he finished speaking. It has nothing to do with Lin Ruyue. I'm not jealous, let alone envious. The moonlight gradually faded, and only the flickering candlelight remained in Xiaoling's eyes. He is the best swordsman in the world, with eyes as sharp as an eagle and a back as strong as a pine tree. I just don't love you anymore, Xiaoling. The candle flame went out in his eyes, and Xiaoling's figure seemed to be hunched a little. He raised one corner of his mouth and said coldly, "Very good. Pei Shan, you're fine."
12.
Xiaoling left very decisively. The next day, I asked Xiang to strengthen the defense of the valley. The situation is turbulent right now, so we'd better be careful. Xiang was very obedient, especially since the Tang clan's pursuit was still going on during this period. The Tang clan elder died at the hands of the Lin family's hidden weapons. This was a deep hatred. Soon, the people from the Tang sect found the floating flower valley. Because of his parents, Fawaga still has prestige in the underworld. What's more, I am the only orphan left, so the elders are quite kind to me. They came to my door politely, so I naturally welcomed them. Speaking of Xiaoling and Lin Ruyue, I smiled bitterly. You may not know, but I have already divorced Xiaoling. Real? I nodded. If you don't believe it, just go and ask the abbot of the Golden Pagoda Temple. He will know the answer. The Tang sect member stared at me and then sighed. That's right. Your husband Xiaoling risked the world's disapproval to save Lin Ruyue. If I were a woman, I wouldn't be able to stand it either. This is a truth that everyone understands, except Xiaoling. After Tang men left, I ordered the valley to be closed, and from then on no one was allowed to enter. During the confinement, Xiang dragged a man back from outside. He was a carpenter from the next village. He was blind and was chased out. Xiang rubbed her hands and smiled at me. I know the lady doesn't want to invite outsiders in, but he can be a chair. After I became lame, I have been very sensitive. I was always worried about being laughed at, so even if it was difficult to stand up and walk, I would insist on using crutches. I never thought about sitting in a chair. But Xiang felt sorry for me. After all, if I continued to be so stubborn, my only good leg would not last long. Then stay. Xiang nodded and pushed the blind man who was squatting on the ground with a dull look in his eyes. The Lord of Grain wants you to stay. Why don't you thank him? The blind man nodded hurriedly. He couldn't see, so he kowtowed in the direction of the peach tree. What's your name? Lu Qi. He smiled shyly and kept saying he could make anything you wanted. Please make me a wheelchair, the kind that can be pushed. Also, add a secret box for silver needles. Yes, but I'll have to trouble the Lord to heal my wound first. He was driven out by the villagers, his body covered in bruises, and he looked very pitiful. This is not a difficult task for me. Lu Qi worked very efficiently and completed the wheelchair I wanted in just half a month. I was surprised how he could measure the size so accurately when he clearly couldn't see. Size is in the heart, not in the eyes. Just like you, Master Gu, your skills are in your hands, not your legs. I smiled and sat on the chair. Xiang ran in hurriedly from outside, holding up the hem of her skirt. When she saw that I had already sat on the chair, the little girl was about to cry. Miss, it's very pretty, she said softly, her eyes red. 13. With the wheelchair, I can get around more easily than before. I thought about how my parents used to practice medicine and save lives at the foot of the mountain whenever they had time, but this tradition has been discontinued in my generation. Now that I no longer need to stay at home to take care of Xiaoling's food and daily life, I am thinking about reopening the clinic. Lu Qi renovated the thatched house that was left over from the past and built many slopes to facilitate my movement. When the clinic first opened, few people came. After all, the place is isolated and my parents' former reputation has been forgotten over the years. It was an old friend of my father's. The Qingfeng swordsman had injured his leg in a duel and had come here in the heavy rain. He hadn't contacted his parents for several years and originally thought that old friends were still around. Little did he know that I was the only orphan left in the small clinic. "Uncle, have some tea first." I examined his wound, lifting away the top layer of rotten flesh with a fire-hardened knife. Ching Feng gritted his teeth and said, "Little girl, your method is the same as your father's. Fawagu only saved lives, but his methods were a bit crude." I raised my eyes and smiled at him. "Yeah, your leg is also like this." Ching Feng sighed softly. "Apart from these seniors, few people know the cause of my leg problem. I jumped into the icy lake to save someone. I became hypothermic and my leg was broken from hitting a rock at the bottom of the lake. There was only one choice back then, to cripple my leg and save my life. Dad had no choice but to smash his leg completely with his own hands. As for the person I saved, none of my family found him and didn't know who he was. What's the point of talking about these old stories?" I sewed up his wound with shaking hands, but he was such a hero that he didn't even make a sound, and just endured it. "You are a girl who has always been open-minded. I heard that you and Xiaoling got divorced? That's great. You are worthy of being the owner of Fawagu." I nodded. Now, when Xiaoling was mentioned, my heart was no longer troubled. These days I heard that Xiaoling became enemies with the entire martial arts world for Lin Ruyue. He loved her so passionately that I'm afraid he had forgotten me a long time ago. I never thought he would come back. 14. The clinic had run out of firewood, so I sent Ah Xiang and Lu Qi out to get some. It was snowing heavily outside. I heard the sound of heavy footsteps on the snow. Then the back door opened, and I saw Xiaoling in a red dress, with slightly disheveled hair and shoulders covered with fallen snow. He asked quietly if I could come in. I stared at him blankly, and the first thing I noticed was that blood was dripping from his injured arm. "Long time no see." Uncle Ching Feng sat up from the bed, and in an instant, his sword was placed on Xiaoling's neck. Xiaoling did not dodge. He had lost a lot of weight and smiled bitterly. "I have nowhere to go. You little brat, you've let Pei Shan down. How dare you come back now?" Xiaoling twisted his hands, attacking and defending the alien in a flash. After all, he was the #1 swordsman, and Uncle Ching Feng was no match for him. The cold sword was only a moment away from Uncle Chingfeng's chest, and Xiaoling glanced at me sideways. "Pei Shan, I know I was wrong." After saying this, he loosened his wrist and let his favorite sword fall to the ground. "Can I come back?" Ching Feng stamped his feet in anger. He sneered, "Aren't you deeply in love with Lin Ruyue? Now that you have avenged her, you should be happily marrying that woman. Why are you coming back to find Pei Shan?" Xiaoling was the only one left by Lin Ruyue's side. "I have also heard this. Xiaoling killed all the members of the Tang clan for her, just to ensure Lin Ruyue's safety. Now no one in the world dares to mess with Lin Ruyue. It is said that Lin Ruyue swore to marry him in front of her parents' grave. Counting the days, it seems that today is their wedding day." No wonder, I chuckled. No wonder Xiaoling was wearing a bright red dress. It turned out that he was going to marry his sweetheart today. I pursed my lips. Xiaoling also wore a bright red wedding dress with me. But he thought the clothes didn't fit him well enough, so he took them off in front of me. No need to go through all this tedious formalities. I'm not interested. Then he looked at my legs and said, "You can't get married with your legs like this. So forget it." At that time, I never dreamed that one day Xiaoling would run away from marriage for me, wearing her wedding dress. He knelt before me and begged for forgiveness. "Pei Shan, ever since you divorced me, I have never felt at peace. The abbot told me that you went up the mountain to light a long-lasting lamp for me. Pei Shan, I know I was wrong." Xiaoling lowered his head to me, and his straight back fell heavily in front of me. I didn't feel the slightest bit of emotion in my heart. I should have been happy, but I found that I no longer cared. His joys and sorrows are all a burden to me. My love for him was torn to pieces by that one sentence. A husband should be loyal to whoever he or she is married to. Xiaoling, why can't you learn this principle? 15. Uncle Ching Feng slapped his injured arm, and Xiaoling flew 3 feet away. He vomited blood, which melted the snow in front of him. "Why don't you get out of here quickly?" Didn't you see that Pei Shan doesn't want to forgive you? At this time, Ah Xiang happened to be bringing Lu Qi back from fetching firewood. The two were originally in high spirits, but they froze when they saw Xiaoling. Why is it him? Lu Qi was puzzled. He couldn't see, so he pulled Ah Xiang aside and whispered, "Who is it?" "Oh, nothing, just an enemy." He swore to be good to the master, but ended up doing it for a woman outside. Never mind, let's not talk about it. It's unlucky for me to talk about it. Ah Xiang didn't show any good face to Xiaoling at all. Lu Qi laughed twice and said, "I've never seen you lose your temper like this before, Xiang. It seems you are not a good person." Xiaoling had an arrogant temper, but he remained motionless in the face of insults from two people. It was snowing heavily, so I asked them to close the door and add more firewood. It was very warm inside the clinic. Xiaoling knelt there all the time, but his face could no longer be seen clearly in the heavy snow. That person is still here. He couldn't have been frozen to death. How could the dead boy be frozen to death so easily if he had internal energy to protect him? Uncle Qingfeng held his wine glass with a sarcastic look on his face. Besides, it would be even better if he was frozen to death. The next morning, Lu Qi was the first to open the door, and there were already many patients waiting outside. Naturally, they would also talk about Xiaoling, who was kneeling there motionless. Soon, a few little girls came in and whispered to me, "Master Gu, that man must really love you. Otherwise, why would he kneel there motionless? Is he going to die? Don't be sad if Master Gu dies. It's hard to find a sincere man these days." I curled my lips into a faint smile, but my hand became 3 times heavier as I inserted the needle. The girl who was speaking cried out in pain. "Don't experience other people's suffering. Don't encourage others to be good. If he was really good, how could I bear to let him wait outside?" The girl grinned at me sheepishly and nodded quickly. "Master Gu is right. Please be gentler." In a blink of an eye, it was dark again. More than 30 patients came today, and the reputation of the hospital has gradually spread. When closing the door, Ah Xiang looked at Xiaoling, then turned and sighed at me. "Master Gu, you should drive him away. If he really dies." I rubbed my sore arm and shook my head. "No problem, his wife will be here to pick him up soon. I sent a pigeon message to the Lin family last night. Judging from the distance, Lin Ruyue should be on her way." 16. I was woken up by crying sounds at night. I opened the window curtain and looked out, and sure enough, I saw Lin Ruyue kneeling in front of Xiaoling and crying. "Brother, can you please stop being like this?" Xiaoling shook his head. "Go back. I treat you well only because I couldn't get you before. I already have a wife and can't marry you." Lin Ruyue burst into tears. "You are the only one left in this world. How could you bear to abandon me?" "Pei Shan is the only one." Xiaoling blurted out. His lips turned pale, his black eyes shook, and then a line of hot tears flowed out. "I swore to her parents before they died that I would take care of Pei Shan for the rest of her life. I can't leave." "What about me? If you don't like me, why did you avenge me? Why did you agree to marry me? You've made me a laughingstock in the world." Lin Ruyue roared. "I have done everything I can for you, little sister. You can go now. I am Pei Shan's husband. But have you forgotten? When you were a child, you fell into the lake and almost died. I saved you. You said you would do anything for me. Now I want you to be my husband, brother. I've already repaid the favor." Before Xiaoling finished speaking, I had already opened the door. When they heard the voice, they turned around subconsciously. Xiaoling wanted to stand up, but he had been kneeling for too long. His body only swayed a little, and he quickly staggered to his knees. "Pei Shan, you finally agreed to see me." Xiaoling smiled at me, his eyes full of tears. It turns out that Xiaoling could also be so vicious at times. I thought he was always high and mighty, untainted by worldly affairs. "You're noisy." I wheeled my wheelchair over to them. The chair made by Lu Qi is very useful, and it feels as comfortable to walk on even on snow. "Xiaoling, I am no longer your wife. I wrote you a divorce letter half a year ago." Lin Ruyue bit her lower lip, and it was not difficult to tell from her eyes that she resented me. That doesn't count. I never promised you that. Xiaoling shook his head violently and grabbed my hand. He was so cold that it pierced his bones. Mr. Xiao, I am a cripple and I cannot have children. How can I be worthy of you? I leaned over and smiled at Xiaoling. Please don't say that, okay? Xiao Linghun was trembling all over, as if all the needles that had pierced my body were now piercing him back. I pulled his fingers apart bit by bit and watched Xiaoling's hands turn purple. You have always complained that I am a cripple, but Mr. Xiao, do you know how my leg was broken? In the winter of the 4th year of the Qingying reign, a little boy fell into the Jinming Lake. I threw myself into the water to save him. From then on, I became ill and my legs became disabled. I will never be able to practice martial arts again in my life. Xiaoling collapsed like piled snow, and he looked at me in disbelief. It was not until today that I realized that the person I saved was Xiaoling. He recognized the wrong person, loved the wrong person, and hurt the wrong person. This kind of pain is worthy of all the injustice I have suffered in the past 10 years. 17. Countless times in the middle of the night, I would wake up from nightmares. With tears on my face, I leaned against Xiaoling and said, I dreamed that you didn't want me anymore. After Xiaoling was woken up by me, he looked impatient. He pushed me away and said, Don't you think you are being too hypocritical? I spent 10 years suffering from this kind of grievance day after day. So, what does it matter if Xiaoling's hair turned white overnight? What did it matter that Xiaoling was so distraught that he cut off his right hand, which he was so proud of? It's all blood. It hurts to look at it. Xiang shuddered. If this person likes you so much, why did he hurt you in the first place? I divided the herbs without even looking up, because he's a jerk. Xiaoling did not last long in the hospital before the news of his broken hand spread. It was obvious that it was Uncle Qingfeng who spread the news, and many people came to seek revenge on him. He was beaten right in front of me, as if he was cutting open his own heart to make me feel sorry for him. Before long, Xiaoling's martial arts skills were destroyed, and he became a miserable person. I can't bear to watch this anymore. Please ask the abbot to come. The abbot finally persuaded him to leave after much persuasion, and it is said that he took him to the temple to practice. Before leaving, I hung a lot of glass lamps outside my clinic, lighting up my small courtyard like daylight. But who cares? I told Lu Qi to take down the lamp and replace it with his specially made palace lamp. Not only does it look good and won't go out, it also emits a medicinal fragrance. I used to care about every blade of grass and every tree that Xiaoling donated, but after I left, I realized that in this world, as long as I want, everything is available to me. After Xiang and Lu Qi got married, they went to climb the Golden Pagoda temple together holding an umbrella. After coming back, Xiang leaned over and whispered in my ear, That person lit 3,000 eternal lamps for you and guarded them for his whole life. Oh. I lowered my eyes and blew out the candle on the table. If the 6 senses are not pure, one will be struck by lightning. End of article.